York, I am Sabri Benishore with the Marketplace Morning Report. From 8 p.m., American Public Media.
Are supplements and anti-aging products truly beneficial? I'm Dr. Joe Servin. Join me tomorrow at 4 for What's Health Got to Do with It, only on WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Flooding inundates San Marco despite a new pump system. DOT puts rainbow-colored crosswalks in the state's crosshairs. The Supreme Court quells Florida's immigration enforcement zeal, and state lawmakers sue after being denied access to Alligator Alcatraz. We'll talk about all that and more with our panel of journalists on our Friday Week in Review. Later, we get a visit from a tiny dinosaur as Jurassic Quest brings its immersive Mesozoic exhibition to Jacksonville. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. A search continues for more than 170 people missing from the flash flooding in central Texas. The death toll from the disaster has risen to at least 120. Now, some officials are calling for more warning sirens, hoping they'll protect people from future flash floods. But as NPR's Rebecca Hersher reports, those sirens aren't meant to replace other types of warning systems.
Flood warning sirens broadcast a loud alarm and sometimes a spoken message. The technology is widely used in parts of the country with high tornado and tsunami risk, but not so much for floods. Jeanette Sutton is a disaster expert at the University at Albany. She says sirens could save lives in places like the Texas Hill Country, where many people go to camp and fish.
Sirens are best for alerting people who are outside of a building. So it's really going to get people who are camping along a river, which is a really good thing.
Earlier this week, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick told reporters that the state intends to install flood warning sirens in hard-hit Kerr County, Texas. Rebecca Hersher, NPR News.
President Trump is visiting the area today to survey the damage and meet with local officials and first responders. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says his country is prepared to buy Patriot air defense systems from the United States.
Up. He added that his pledge was also a message to Washington to prove that, quote, we're on the same page. Speaking to NBC on Thursday, Trump showed willingness to send weapons to Ukraine on the proviso that NATO is going to reimburse the full cost of those weapons. For NPR News, I'm Esme Nicholson in Berlin.
Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva says he will impose retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. if President Trump follows through on his threat to boost import taxes to 50%. Trump issued the tariff threat, railing against what he calls a witch hunt against far-right former President Jair Bolsonaro, who's on trial for allegedly interfering with Brazil's 2020 elections. Meanwhile, Trump escalated a trade war with Canada, too, threatening to impose a 35% tariff on all imports from Canada, saying the country retaliated instead of working on a deal with the U.S. Prime Minister Mark Carney, though, says his country will continue to work on a deal. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning, I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. Waste Pro Jacksonville has been ordered to pay nearly $1.5 million to settle a 2023 lawsuit by an employee who said he and 24 other Black and Haitian American workers suffered from a hostile work environment based on their race, color, and national origin from 2021 onward. The original complaint says that welder Fednal Pierre and other Black and Haitian equal employment opportunity laws. Beekeeping and live concerts are on tap this weekend for Northeast Florida. Tomorrow, join the Jacksonville Beekeepers Association for its monthly mentoring workshop where beginners get hands-on experience and advice from seasoned beekeepers. The free event starts at 9 at the Jack's Bees Apiary on West 1st Street. Then on Saturday, the final concert at the Museum of Science and History's Brian Gooding Planetarium ahead of Mosh's closure in September and eventual move to Jacksonville's North Bank. Local rock band Skyview will perform. Doors open at 7:30 tomorrow night. The show starts at 8:30. Heavy downpours expected later on this afternoon, highs in the low to mid-90s.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include AG1, introducing AG1 Next Gen, a daily drink with vitamins, minerals, and probiotics to support overall health. Learn more at drinkag1.com/science.
Mendenhall, City Hall reporter and associate editor at Jacksonville Today. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Ann. It's good to be here.
Good to have you. We're also joined by Sylvia Perry, editor at the Jacksonville Free Press. Good morning, Sylvia.
Good morning.
And David Bauerlein, Metro reporter at the Florida Times-Union. Good morning, David.
Good morning, everybody.
And adjacent to David, Ashley Harding, anchor and reporter at News for Jax. Good morning, Ashley.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Loving your red dress today.
It's my power color for Friday.
Let's begin, if we can, with a decision by the U.S. Supreme Court that has both state and local implications. Basically, the Supreme Court holding in place a lower court order blocking enforcement of the state's immigration bill. This is a law that would let state officials prosecute unauthorized migrants who enter the state. And a lot of people have said, David, that this is a duplication of federal law and federal authority. But the Supreme Court didn't really weigh in on the particulars.
They didn't. They basically just said, we're not going to hear this appeal at this time, and said it's kicked it back to the trial court where this injunction is in place now, pending a full-blown trial and arguments and counter-arguments. And then, of course, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, I think they're going to have some arguments in October. So it's not the final word, but you do have a case where the trial court has put in place a injunction. The appeals court previously turned down an appeal by the state of Florida. And then the Supreme Court has said the same thing. We're not hearing this right now. So you've had three levels of the court system that have all said basically the same thing, that this injunction can stay until there's a full-blown trial on the merits.
And this is a case that has been very contentious. Obviously, the lower court judge, issued this injunction. The Attorney General in Florida, James Huthmyer, basically, indicating he might not necessarily observe that order, necessarily saying it wasn't a legitimate order in some advice that he gave to other law enforcement agents, and then a civil contempt order brought against him. And so while this has been very contentious, there's no telling how it will play out before the Supreme Court when and if they do hear it.
Right, exactly. And we do know that there's 150 years of court precedent that says the federal government controls exclusively immigration, and that every state and every city can't create its own separate laws for immigration. And so it would be something, precedents change. And if so, that would be something would happen, I think, before the U.S. Supreme Court, as opposed to something happening at a lower court. But that means there's going to be months, if not years. These cases take a long time at this point when you have an injunction in place to have anything change. So for the foreseeable future, they're not going to be able to enforce that state law.
And there is some state and local connection here, Ashley Harding, because this is a bill that is sort of emulated at the local level by our own city council. They basically said, whereas the state is passing this law that says it's illegal to enter Florida if you don't have documentation, our city council passed a law saying it's illegal to be in the city of Jacksonville without documentation. And so that same bill is reflective of what the state was attempting.
And one thing we heard the mayor say repeatedly is that it's duplicative of the state law. And, she said repeatedly over many times we heard her say that this is a federal lane. This is a federal lane. And, going out in the field and talking to people and hearing from people, no matter what, people feel so strongly about this. The one thing I keep hearing from people is that they want people, no matter what their documentation is, to feel like they belong here. But you also hear the other side as well. You hear, no matter what, people feel really strongly about this. And I think, as David was saying, precedents can change. It takes a long time, but precedents do change sometimes. But, locally, it is still a big conversation. And I think no matter what happens at the state level, the federal level, it is something that we need to keep an eye on because who knows, it could have that trickle down effect.
Yeah, and Mike Mendenhall, is there much discussion about this at the city level at this point?
I mean, after the bill, which was originally introduced by now President Kevin Carrico, took effect, and Mayor Donna Deegan let it go into law by not signing it. She said that she didn't support the bill, but didn't see a path really toward a veto. The conversation shifted toward city dollars that could possibly be going to organizations that get grant money from the city that could be aiding undocumented immigrants. That's where the conversation went, and then there was a separate piece of legislation that really took up the air in the room. But it shouldn't come to a surprise to the city council that members that passed this bill, because the city attorneys and the Office of General Counsel were saying during the debate that they were mentioning these pending court cases and knew that that it could be very difficult to enforce this law because it could possibly be unconstitutional. So even throughout the debate on whether or not they were actually going to institute this law mandating local punishments for undocumented immigrants entering our city, they knew that there was a risk that it wouldn't pass muster.
Got a call from John on the south side about this issue. Good morning, John. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for covering a broad range of topics today. And on this first issue, I'm just wondering, the injunction is suggesting that there can't be the duplication in the state and potentially local government of something that's of federal jurisdiction. How does that work in the reverse, being that there are obviously standing sanctuary cities that protect and spend money and create and do actions to protect the undocumented? And thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question, John. I mean, we know that sanctuary cities are by law illegal in Florida, and so that's not a question that I personally have an answer to. I don't know if any of you all know. I mean, I think it's similar to, for instance, medical marijuana or something that is contrary to federal law, and sometimes those things don't necessarily agree. And I'm not sure, kind of what happens in the balance.
Yeah, like a sanctuary city is a local government or state government that says, we're not going to work with federal authorities to enforce federal immigration law. And that is illegal in the state of Florida. If you're a local government or a state like the city of Jacksonville, you must cooperate with the state, with the federal government, and the city of Jacksonville does. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is party to all these agreements. So that's not really an issue here in Florida. Maybe in other cities or other states that have taken a position that we're not going to work with ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement. That doesn't mean they're not able to go into the city and do what they do. It just means the local government is not going to help them do it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I do want to move on to a topic, Sylvia, that it was in the news just yesterday, this lawsuit that was filed over Alligator Alcatraz, which is the name of this facility that's been kind of rapidly built down in South Florida to house undocumented migrants. And so we know that there are some lawmakers who were denied access to this facility, including our own local rep, Angie Nixon, now basically saying, that was an illegal move by the state not to allow them to do a kind of a spot inspection of this place.
Well, Representative Dixon has long time been very vocal on many issues, including those not exactly in her district, which is great because what you do for one, you have to do for all. She went down there unexpected, knocked on the door, wanted to have her right as a legislator to go in. She was denied. And now other legislators have joined in that fight. And that's something that we should all be a part of and be afraid of, because at any given point, how this all started, I remember reading last night about a gentleman in Georgia born in the USA, stopped, detained 24 hours because he didn't have his quote unquote papers, but yet a U.S. citizen. So what goes on, we open ourselves up to a variety of lawsuits and everything else regarding human rights and everything else.
Yeah.
You've seen on television what's going on in the different countries, people being sent to Sudan, elsewhere.
Yeah.
We need to have access.
And the oversight, obviously, since this became an issue, state officials have invited congressmen and state lawmakers to go and tour the facility this Saturday. But the lawmakers behind this lawsuit say, that's not sufficient. That doesn't provide this sort of spontaneous access that gives us a true measure of conditions and being able to evaluate, how the facility is operating.
That is correct. And considering something that was built in 30 days to house citizens, it is downright scary. We don't treat our own prisoners right. You think about the lawsuits going on in Jackson, Mississippi, XYZ. So to understand what's going on in Alligator Alley is important.
If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Mike Mendenhall, David Bauerlein, Sylvia Perry, and Ashley Harding about the week's headlines. And you can join the conversation by calling 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or X at FCC On Air. We've got a call from Philip on the west side. Good morning, Philip. Go ahead.
Yes, we have all these immigrants that we're detaining. Is the government doing anything to make these people legal? Is there anybody volunteering to do the paperwork for these people to make them legal, or are we just imprisoning them?
Thanks, Philip. Ashley, one of the things that keeps surfacing as this debate evolves nationally is that a lot of, existing protections or existing exemptions are being pulled back. And so people who maybe have had kind of a temporary protective status or some other, administrative reason to be in this country as they're pursuing citizenship or whatever, that some of those provisions are being pulled back. And so people who might have felt that they could be here no longer perhaps are safe to be here, and they become undocumented.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm not going to name names, but I have a very dear friend who has lived here for over a decade. He is from another country. I'm not going to say where, just for his protection. It's in the Middle East. But he has lived here legally with a work visa for 12 years. For whatever reason, I think it was some kind of paperwork snafu. I'm not exactly sure, but he and his brother were both denied green cards not too long ago. They were devastated by that. This is somebody who has never even gotten a parking ticket. I'm very serious about that. And he told me that, with everything happening, he has an attorney. They've been working through this for years, and he was telling me he is very worried about what could potentially happen. We do hear stories like that from people who've been going through the process. And I do think it's important to remember the process takes a very, very long time. It is not an easy process. And you can make the argument that it shouldn't be easy. Of course, that's fair. Any thoughts on this are fair, but I do feel like I'm hearing more concerns from people who are in the process. But then we saw all these changes, and now they basically feel like they're in some sort of limbo. Am I safe, even though I did come here legally? We hear stories like that.
Right. And even people who are kind of doing their check-ins as required under the law according to the process that they're in. Sometimes they'll show up at an immigration facility to kind of do their due diligence, keep their paperwork up to date, and then they are also detained.
That friend that I was mentioning, who I'm not mentioning, he told me his attorney has other clients who are from the same area that he is. They've been going through this process. He told me a story about how his attorney had another client who was going to his or her immigration court hearing, and he said to him, "Do not leave that facility until I'm there." Because they were concerned about what could happen once this individual tried to leave the courthouse.
Yeah. Well, to Philip's question, Mike Mendenhall, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of momentum towards trying to provide people or, other than kind of immigration advocates, because certainly, the politics in a place like Florida or in Jacksonville is kind of pro enforcement, additional immigration crackdowns, and perhaps making it more difficult for people who are here to remain, whether they're undocumented or perhaps even if they have a temporary documentation.
Yeah, and that's right. And and I think that the conversation and any momentum on a pathway to citizenship, like there has not been political energy to do that, whether it be here in the state of Florida or nationally for quite a few years. I mean, it's not even really a part of the conversation right now. So yeah, I agree. I mean, the state of Florida. You look at the diversity amongst our communities. There's all that, like, historically, there's always been a willingness, particularly from immigrants from Cuba, to welcome those folks. But that that kind of sentiment appears to be kind of getting like kind of washed out a little bit from a lot of the deportation talk.
Yeah.
I'm further offended by the fact that whether it be the president or the governor feels that these people are taking away American jobs. I have not met a person yet who has raised their child to be a migrant worker, you know, and any excuse possible to detain and deflect is being used.
I want to move on now to a topic about some local budget cuts, David, that you covered this week, the Emerald Trail. This is actually a conversation we had earlier this week briefly with the mayor of Jacksonville when she was on the program. Let's just hear a little bit of what she had to say about that.
I don't think this was personal. I mean, what they're telling us is that unobligated grants is part of the Neighborhood Access and Equity Grants program. All of them were just summarily dismissed. Really, anything that had to do with it had equity or those words, in the title didn't go well. But we are told that given that this administration is saying that its priorities are economic development, that we can reapply under an economic development grant.
So, David, this is the Emerald Trail. It's going to connect 5 disparate neighborhoods around the city to downtown, and the city just a year ago celebrating $147 million grant, the largest in city history. 1 year later, mourning the loss of the largest grant in city history.
Yeah, what a turnaround. And it just shows that, things that usually it would be a case where one presidential administration awards grants, the next administration comes in, they may have their own program set up, but they don't go back and retroactively wipe out grants that were awarded by a previous administration. This is kind of a new approach now to governance. This program was designed by the Biden administration to sort of provide transportation dollars towards communities that perhaps in the past had been left behind, cut off because of other transportation work. I mean, we know of interstate highways that have split apart communities, these kind of things. So it's an effort to kind of knit together these communities. And for the type of program that the Biden administration was talking about, this checked all the boxes. I think it was one of, if not the highest rated grant, one of the highest rated grants. And $147 million, I mean, that's a staggering amount of money to get from a federal grant. And if the city is successfully getting other grants for that, there's no way they're going to be in that ballpark. And we'll see if they're going to be able to get any grants at all, certainly in the remaining 2 years of the Deegan administration term.
And the mayor, noted in that soundbite that we just had talking about, the language, the equity kind of component. This was in fact called it was a DOT program called the Neighborhood Access and Equity Program, which is something that's kind of being wholesale disposed of. And so there is this possibility of going back. But you talked to a couple of lawmakers who represent this area who voted for the bill, the big, beautiful bill, as it's kind of colloquially known, and but also didn't support this loss of funding, including Congressman John Rutherford, who you talked to.
Right. John Rutherford was at the ribbon cutting ceremony with the big ribbons cutting the green ribbon along with the mayor and other officials. So a year ago, and then Aaron Bean, who represents the other part of Jacksonville, actually the part of Jacksonville where the Emerald Trail actually is being built, announced it, the grant, kind of stole the thunder of the mayor's office and the JTA by getting out front on the announcement. I've worked with John Rutherford to bring all this money. It's going to be great, really espousing the program. And then a year later, because this is rolled into this huge, big bill, and they vote for it because obviously, this is the President Trump's agenda, the Republican-controlled Congress went, supported it, but this was a casualty of it. And, and it got rolled into it by the Trump administration because they're looking to kind of wipe out at least part of what the Biden administration did during its term.
Got a call from Linda in Mandarin. Good morning, Linda. Go ahead.
Good morning. I think a couple of things I'd like to just pull forward. Technically, we're saying this is what the Trump administration, but the Trump administration supposedly didn't write this legislation. It was Congress. Our Congress people, I don't know if they have any minutes where they argued for retaining this funding, or did they just roll over and then they come and tell the media, oh, I really wanted that in, I fought for it. We don't know that. All we know is they have a vote, and they voted against our community because they needed that money to give tax cuts to billionaires. Now, I don't know who besides Sean Conn in our community is a billionaire. They might be undercover in secret, but the multimillionaires are going to get a tax break. So let's just I'd like to just put that out there, is that Congress supposedly wrote this legislation, not President Trump. And we know that the Trump administration has been doing keyword searches for, equity, diversity, inclusion. God forbid we try to diversify. Maybe they also think that if you diversify your portfolio in your stocks, you're also a bad diversity person. It's just banal. And these people shouldn't be able to pull the wool over Americans' eyes. Your congressperson voted to strip your community of $147 million for tax cuts. And don't let them tell you anything else and get away with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Sylvia, in his report and speaking to Congressman Rutherford, David reported that he said basically, well, the operative word here is big. It's so big, you have to weigh the costs and the benefits of this bill far outweigh the costs. And so, they kind of had to take that bitter pill with what they saw as an overall gain by passing this bill, even though it hurt their district in some ways.
It is the ultimate taking one for the team. And in full disclosure, I sit on the Groundworks Jacksonville board. I cannot tell you how excited we were to have this. I mean, you think of a trail going through our city, connecting 14 different communities, 20 schools, 3 parks. It was not about adding diversity. It was about connecting our community together. And the pride that we all took in looking at the art that was going to be on it, the safety, the trail, everything that was going to make us walk from one end of Jacksonville to the other. And to think it's all just gone in one swoop. And now it just has to be retooled. The mayor, the congresspeople, the representatives, they all said, keep investing, keep believing. And we're going to take this off in little small bites. The trail was scheduled to be done ahead of time by 2031. Now it's going to be a bit of a delay, but I believe we all have faith that it will go on. It may be small bites. It's 2 segments that are now still due to current funding, whether it be the gas tax, et cetera, that are still on schedule. But otherwise, we are going to have to fight and get the rest of that money to continue to add to our city's diversity.
Yeah. And Mike, the mayor has said we're committed to this project. This will delay it. It won't derail it. But this is also in the context of an administration, a mayor that has very much said delay is the enemy of progress, and there's so much time that has been lost, and there's been so much opportunity lost to time wasted in terms of, taking advantage of momentum. So how does something like this, when you say, well, it's not going to be 2031, that was what this grant was going to allow, this acceleration, that's lost. Now we're just going to have to do it piecemeal as the gas tax allows.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same argument that you hear developers make when they're proposing a project that delay is the enemy of progress. You have a lot of there's been a lot of talk about you look at downtown, for example, expanding downtown development, bringing more residential, commercial, retail development down there. The Emerald Trail was actually used as kind of as a part of a rationale to bring a lot of residential and retail to downtown Jacksonville. You look at the Union Terminal Warehouse, for example, which is kind of right on the edge of downtown on the east side. That the trail is actually proposed to run right through that building. There's like a tunnel underneath there, so it's going to be an amenity for the residents. So those are some of the kind of examples. You had a group from Atlanta that came down and invested in that property. In Atlanta, there's a Beltline, the Beltline Trail, which is very similar to the Emerald Trail, has brought a ton of new projects and development to the area that it serves, and it acts as a way of interconnectivity for the residents in the area, that so they can access all of that. So that's that delay, if anybody, if any developers were looking at downtown and looking like, man, we're going to have this great project down here, coming online right when we're, breaking ground on our project, that could be a piece of consideration for those folks.
It's the domino effect of how it's going to affect our entire city.
And
our
the
development.
Phoenix Innovation District has also, made connectivity to the Emerald Trail central to that project, because bikes will be able to get there, and kind of everything that they've done is, I think they've actually invested in making sure that there's a spur that kind of connects them, more directly. So we're talking about the week's headlines. We're going to be talking in a bit about an AI fake targeting Marco Rubio, as well as San Marco's continued struggle with flooding. But I do want to move on now to a topic that is not unrelated to this, Ashley, because we're talking about changes in policy specific to Department of Transportation, pullback on anything that is sort of connected to diversity, or climate change, or gender identity, DEI, racial equity, environmental justice. All of those things have been identified as problematic by this administration and by the Department of Transportation. And so now there's this alignment between our Department of Transportation in Florida and the National Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, on targeting rainbow-striped crosswalks. Can you kind of catch us up on what we know about what FDOT is telling local communities like ours?
So basically, FDOT is saying that they're basing this on safety. They're talking about things that are distractions, things that deviate from what we typically know to involve traffic signals, right of way, signage, things like that. So they're saying that it's a distraction, and they're talking about how sidewalk murals, crosswalk murals, artwork, things like that can be a distraction. So what they want is to remove these things and basically have just, I guess, uniform might be the terminology to use here. But, one of the things that's really the rainbow artwork that's there in 5 Points, your mind goes to it right away because it is colorful. It's right there. It is prominent. But one thing I observed, and I don't think we've heard this publicly yet, correct me if we have, but if you go on East Bay Street, like you're heading to WJCT, what do you see on the ground? You see jaguar paw prints.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm distracted. I can't see. I can't drive.
Right. So, those have been, I'm not sure when they got here. I know they've been here longer than the 12 years I've been here. So,
that's an interesting point, in part because that is the innovation corridor that JTA is using for ultimately their autonomous vehicles. And David, the automation of transportation is one of the reasons that DOT, both state and federal, has said we can't deviate from these standard norms, and everything has to be kind of uniform in order not to distract automated vehicles. But I would guess the paw prints are.
And if you notice, they go in one direction.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and they go for a pretty sizable stretch of East Bay Street. You see it as soon as you get off the Main Street Bridge, and
leading to the stadium.
Leading to the stadium. So you're talking about a fair amount of road here.
Yeah.
And the direction from the DOT and the U.S. Department of Transportation, it's not specific to rainbow colors, which is the pride colors. It's saying you shouldn't have art on pavement that will distract drivers. So, that does raise the question, does that mean that you're no longer going to be allowed to have the jaguar's paw prints? We were talking about this earlier, there's a really pretty nice mural on San Marco Boulevard near I-95 that takes up the whole intersection. It was unveiled a couple of years ago. It's part of beautifying the neighborhood. Well, if you're saying that murals are distractions to drivers, and because this is all driven by safety concerns is what they're saying, well, then you would really have to also cover up black that out if you're going to black out rainbow colored murals. And so it's the same thing as when we discussed earlier about the bridge lighting. The state said, well, no more lighting of the bridges because, opposition to having pride lights. Well, that means you can't use any other lights on that bridge either. And so we'll see, how this is applied. If the argument is you want to keep drivers safe, then it would seem to be that you can't have paw prints either. You can't have this other mural on San Marco Boulevard? Or is it just going to be, well, we don't like the speech that this particular mural has, and therefore we're going to ban it?
I want to take a call just quickly from Sally in Springfield. Good morning, Sally. Go ahead.
Good morning. I just wanted to express that many Americans are really infuriated with all these different vindictive and petty actions. You know, everybody agrees that the immigration policies can be fine-tuned, but just the inhumanity of the treatment of the people is appalling. It's the same thing that's infuriating, that now our city officials have to rewrite a grant because it had DEI in it. And this is a waste of taxpayer dollars and time for these officials. And lastly, the rainbow crosswalk, it really does appear to be some kind of, I'll just use the word prejudice. You know, instead of taking up these little crosswalks for a pride display, maybe work with it and have a flashing light, figure out a way to keep the fun in people's lives. It's really wearing on a lot of us. So that's all.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. I mean, there is, there have been these rainbow crosswalks in Jacksonville and 5 Points in Springfield that have been a celebration or expression of pride. But there's one also in Orlando that kind of attaches to much deeper emotions. And that's the one that is outside the site of the Pulse nightclub shooting. And is in fact part of an overall display or kind of, space that's being created there that is funded by state dollars, that got $400,000 in state funding this year, to kind of create this perpetual memorial. And, a feature of that is this crosswalk, Mike.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all it kind of all blends into community priorities, but in community character, and it's interesting because here in Jacksonville, Downtown Vision a few years ago had a big push for placemaking. They hired a placemaking director. You see similar pushes in places like Springfield or Riverside, Avondale to do small things that improve the curb appeal and just the overall character. These kind of crosswalks, murals, they're all public art. It's all part of that. So it almost becomes like the local policies, the local initiatives, even state taxpayer dollars, as you pointed out with the crosswalk in Orlando to honor Pulse nightclub. It almost becomes like they become kind of antagonistic's not the word I'm looking for, but just kind of just opposite of each other. It's contrasting viewpoints.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, Sylvia, because one of the one that's in 5 Points is an initiative by Riverside Avondale Preservation. And to Mike's point, really is about, placemaking, feeding off the vibe of 5 Points, which is kind of funky and colorful and always has been. And the goal there is to reinforce this neighborhood identity. I mean, there's a lot of places where you'd think that community leaders would be thrilled to have, a community desirous of creating a space and participating and kind of helping to define that community in a positive way.
Yes. Yeah. We were talking about this beforehand. Again, it's reflective of a community, reflective of all of its constituents. But none of this got to be a problem until the new residents in D.C. and the Black Lives mural in the middle of D.C. And when that had to go and had to go around the country, then everything had to go. What you do for one, you have to do for all, because once you reflect against one constituency, you have to reflect against them all. And I believe the Black Lives Matter mural definitely set this chain off around the country. So Jacksonville isn't the only community.
Yeah. I do want to talk about resiliency, because that's an issue that has come to the fore. There's more rain in the forecast for this afternoon. San Marco has really been getting hammered this last week with flooding. And it is despite the fact that there have been some significant community investments and big plans to pump out water when there's a problem. So, Ashley, this is something that, it's making life really hard for people who just are trying to live in San Marco. We're seeing cars destroyed. You can't get to work. You can't get to home. It is a real life impediment at this point.
People are beyond frustrated. Whenever I do a story on San Marco flooding, part of me is like, oh, we're still on this. But the other part of me is like, I'm not going to have any problems finding people to talk to because it's a fact. That's part of our jobs as journalists. We talk to people. Not everyone's comfortable on television. Totally understand. But, these people are beyond frustrated. The last go around, I met this really nice young man who told me, we moved here a few years ago, but, there's the construction going on that's supposed to help alleviate this. He said, well, part of the road is closed, so now people are coming through my street. They're making it worse. They're not able to see, so they're driving onto my yard and making a mess. And that was an issue I didn't have to deal with. So now it's happening in conjunction with the actual flooding. And high tide is clearly an issue. That's clearly a concern. Pumping is definitely a great idea, but the water goes to the river, but what happens when there is high tide? But these people are beyond frustrated. I got here 12 years ago. This issue predates my arrival 12 years ago by generations. And, these people are tired of it. They're ready to see real results. They're ready to see real relief. And, San Marco is a great neighborhood. Who wants to deal with this, though?
Yeah. I mean, we talked during the last storm season about the need for no wake zone signs because you see all of these businesses and homeowners that are impacted by cars driving through, and it really creates a wave that makes the difference between something that is flooding their yard to something that's actually flooding their hallways and their home.
There is a woman there in San Marco. I can't remember for the life of me which street it's on. You all may know who I'm talking about, but she's got a lot of signs pointing out the wake zones, and it's just that you could get into the house. Now you've got an even bigger issue.
Yeah,
but you're right. They're very vocal about it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is not just happening obviously in San Marco. It's one of the more visible places, but just this week, Mayport, unveiled this new visitor greeting center. It's not called a welcome center. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering quite the name of it, but it's basically where visitors arrive at Mayport when they're being checked in, and it is notorious for people who go to Mayport underwater, surrounded by sandbags. They always have to have pumps out when there's rain. So they're, celebrating this ribbon cutting because this is now 10 feet off the ground. And according to all, climate forecasts, 10 feet is about what Mayport could well be facing in the next 75 years or so. So they're preparing and are just in a very vulnerable place, David.
Yeah, it's hard to even visualize 10 feet off the ground. That's just sort of staggering in and of itself. I mean, that's taller than the ceiling in this room. Yeah, I mean, that's, and then you're kind of like, okay, so you're 10 feet off the ground. Does that mean then you're going to have to swim to this this place because the water's 8 feet off the ground? I mean, there are all these projections, all these models that show that's what's going to happen. San Marco's a low-lying neighborhood. That's not going to become less problematic over time. I will say real quickly on the San Marco project, the jury's kind of still out because that project is partially built. It won't be till early 2026 when it's finished, and then we can see, okay, what is the apples to apples comparison?
And remind us, because it's like the pump is done, but the pipe is not done. Is that kind of the deal?
Right. So they built this pump station. It's supposed to move the water out really fast, but they still have a lot of undersized pipes that are going to be replaced in the coming months. And so obviously you got to get the water into the pipes so the pump station can get it out to the river. So until you get the bigger pipes in, then we'll know, is this working or not? It's kind of midstream, so to speak, at this point. But as there is a lot of inconvenience. The road is finally supposed to open up at that intersection this month, but that's been closed for 2 months. So people are really dealing with a lot of hassle in the meantime.
Yeah, and I know, Sylvia, just from walking around my neighborhood with the dog after floods, you do kind of have this tendency to walk up in somebody's lawn if the street is underwater. And for people who are living along flooded streets, that's exactly what Ashley's talking about. You all of a sudden have vehicles, tearing up your lawn, driving up on, your grass to try to avoid this flooding, to avoid wrecking their cars.
The reality is Jacksonville is a city of 7 bridges. We are a series of islands that are connected by bridges. So it's very few areas that are not affected by water. And as Ashley said, San Marco is a celebrated neighborhood. Imagine the neighborhoods that are not. And we're still looking for a pump station and everything else. I live on the water, and there's not a time that it doesn't rain hard that A, I don't lose power, or B, something is not flooded. So we have a long way to go.
We have a message from the Reverend Kaufman, an email saying it's unfortunate that DEI is being treated politically as if it were a social disease when the nation's founders declared that all are created equal and have a right to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I do want to move on just to the topic of AI fakes, because this is a problem that hit the administration, the presidential administration, again this week. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is the victim, or at least the focus of this artificial intelligence scam. And, as we know, it's becoming altogether much more common for anyone in public life, Ashley. It's probably something that people in your line of work have to think about as well. But here you have the Secretary of State, being impersonated in calls to governors and lawmakers. We don't even know if they were duped or not. It's not clear if they provided any information in response to these fakes.
All I can say is that's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying. 5-10 years ago, this never would have even entered my consciousness. But the fact that this is now seems to have reached this type of level with Secretary Rubio, I have to admit, it gives me a different kind of paranoia, because, we all get calls from scammers. Do you know what I'm talking about? I try not to answer them, but sometimes I do. I need to stop. Part of me wonders if they're waiting for me to say something specific that they can record and then use for my voice. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
It's opened up a whole new level of paranoia, and at least for me. But, it's just the fact that it went this far, and it's like, what's next at this point? And the next question I have is, how do you legislate that? Because at some point, we got to try to get a handle on that. It just goes to show you, as technology evolves, new problems persist, and that creates all new conversations and all new need for legislation. But golly,
Yeah,
it's just
or
scary.
technological solutions, even, David. I mean, we're talking about something, just in May, Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, had somewhat different, but people were able to kind of get into her phone, access her phone numbers, and then call people on her phone list impersonating her. And so, this is one thing if your grandma's being faked by, an AI call that appears to be the grandson, which I think a lot of people worry about. But when you're talking about top level officials in the presidential administration, that is a real national security issue.
No, definitely, and I agree completely. It's terrifying, the
Yeah.
idea that, and the technology's only going to get, quote, better. I mean, right now, as I understand it, the Marco Rubio thing was, you could kind of tell it wasn't really Marco Rubio, and that's but as they get better and better at being able to dupe people are going to get duped. And the part of the reporting on Marco Rubio was he's been a public figure for decades. It's very easy to get his voice from news conferences, speeches. I hate to say it, but all they have to do is listen to the channel news or talk show hosts, and there's your voice there. And so we're all kind of out there in that regard. And so I don't know how you legislate either, other than you just punish people who do it and make it really painful for them if they try to do that stuff.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Sylvia Perry, Ashley Harding, Mike Mendenhall, David Bauerlein, thanks so much for coming on today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Have a great weekend.
You too as well. And up next, from fossil excavation to raptor training, a traveling prehistoric experience roars into town.
Congaree and Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. When people are hurt through no fault of their own, finding the who, what, when, where, why, and how that led to the accident is critical to proving the truth.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
On the next Florida Roundup, property insurance matters to the people of Florida. Those were the words of the top lawmaker in the State House 4 months ago. But lawmakers did little to address the high cost of home insurance this year. The rate of increases may have slowed, but Florida still has some of the most expensive home insurance. How has yours changed? How does the cost of protection affect your budget? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
Join WJCT Public Media and the Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens for a special screening of The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez, a searing 1982 Western hailed as beautifully shot and criminally overlooked. Gregorio Cortez tells the true story of a Mexican-American farmer thrust into legend after a tragic misunderstanding. Don't miss this one-night-only screening, Wednesday, July 16th at 7 p.m. at WJCT Studios. Presented in coordination with the Cummer Museum's exhibition Knowing the West. Details and tickets at wjct.org/film.
At least 120 people died in the Texas flash floods this weekend, a quarter of those children. Dozens are still missing. What happened with the flood warning system, and how much federal recovery help can Texas expect? Also, the tussle over tariffs continue. It's all on the Friday News Roundup next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, an immersive dinosaur exhibit opens today featuring animatronic replicas of Jurassic-era reptiles. Joining me now to talk about it is Suave Lovely. He's the Jurassic Quest dinosaur trainer. Good morning, Suave.
Good morning. Good morning.
We're also joined by Shamad Muhammad, who is Cammie's handler and Cammie in arms, a baby Camarasaurus. Thanks for being here. All right. So we're going to learn a little bit about Cammie. If you're not watching our live stream, I urge you to turn it on because this is an adorable, dear little arm baby here, part of the exhibit. So, Suave, this is just one of many dinosaurs that we'll see in this exhibition. Is that right?
Yeah. So we have over 165 million years worth of dinosaurs here. So
wow.
Once you guys come, it's going to be something you know, and most definitely it's going to be something you don't know at all.
Are these critters that we know as the dinosaurs that we've read about in books? Do they replicate kind of the real dinosaurs? Are they creations based on kind of
So we make sure our dinosaurs are extremely lifelike. So how they would have lived back then is what you'll be coming to see when you come in here. So be prepared to be thrown back in time.
Yeah. And so this little one, Cammie, I guess would have been a baby dinosaur or just
Correct.
a small one.
Correct. She'll be a baby dinosaur. So this is a Camarasaurus. Believe it or not, she's only 6 weeks old. So she's still a baby.
Okay. Which is probably the only reason that she's being held here,
It is.
as opposed to, perhaps
It is.
doing some damage to her handler. So what is the goal of this exhibit? I mean, we know kids love dinosaurs. Actually, I know our director, Brady, loves dinosaurs. He checked it out.
Yeah. Dinosaurs are for everybody from age 2 to 102. It doesn't matter. If you love dinosaurs, Jurassic Quest is the place to be. You get to, like I said earlier, be thrown back in time with over 165 million years worth of dinosaurs. You get to learn something new. You get to a lot of hands-on activities, ride dinosaurs, and all type of things at Jurassic Quest.
Oh, wow. So I'm going to ask you how you got into this line of work. I mean, how does one become a dinosaur trainer?
So ever since I was a kid, I've loved dinosaurs. And once I found the opportunity to work with Jurassic Quest, I just had to jump on that.
Yeah.
I just had to jump on it.
Is there a skill set that you have to master to become a dinosaur trainer?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And you guys can also do that. We have a raptor training area at
Okay,
Jurassic
describe
Quest.
that a little bit. What is that like?
So not only do we have baby dinosaurs, we have life-size dinosaurs, as we said before, and we have a Utah raptor. His name is Diego. And the kids can come out, train him, teach him a couple of tricks, and make sure he does very good. And once he does that, you guys can leave certified dinosaur trainers like myself.
So is this what is I mean, I know you said everybody loves dinosaurs at all ages, but what age group is this designed for at the younger level?
So it's online, it's from 2 to 12.
Okay.
But if you love dinosaurs, there's something for you to do here, no matter what it is. But online is from 2 to 12.
So there is sort of the enjoyment of seeing these dinosaurs, and we're seeing some pictures of the displays, and it is a really cool looking thing. But there's some very educational elements to this, including excavating fossils.
Yes.
Can you talk about how that experience works and kind of that immersive part of it?
Gotcha. So like I said, it's a lot of hands-on things. So not only do we have those fossils there, but we also have a fossil table where you can see real-life fossils, learn about fossils. We have a couple fossils you can touch, feel like, see what it feels like from how it was, how it is. And we have face paint where you can come get your face painted, green screen. You can take a picture on top of a dinosaur, and it's like you're riding the dinosaur. It's a lot of different options from pictures you can choose. So it's a lot of cool hands-on things at Jurassic Quest.
And
A lot of things for the family.
There's also kind of just like your traditional fun stuff for kids too, like bounce house.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's
About those bounce houses. Once you get there, you will get stuck. I should add, you will be there for the whole time.
So it opens today. Can you just sort of give us like how long you're in town? You're here at least 3 days, I think, right?
Yeah. So we're here for a whole week. Show wise, we're here for 3 days. We're Friday to Sunday. We open up at 12 today and we close at 6. So if you guys haven't already got your tickets, if you use Dino20, you can save 20% off any tickets you buy at JurassicQuest.com.
And they're big. So this is actually at the Prime Osborne, which is
It
probably
is.
the only
It
facility
is.
that can accommodate them.
You got to make sure we get them big dinosaurs in.
Yeah. And so anything that people need to plan or prepare for when they're heading out?
It's kind of weird, but socks. You need
All right.
socks for the bounce house. That's
Ah.
about it. And make sure you don't smell like chicken nuggets. Our dinosaurs won't bite you if you don't smell like chicken nuggets.
That's a kind of a tall order. A lot of kids smell like chicken nuggets. So I guess, be safe, if you head out and you do smell like
Yes.
chicken nuggets. Well, it's great to meet Cammie, this little baby Camarasaurus. Appreciate you being here, Shamad, and caring for her. And Suave Lovely, the Jurassic Quest dinosaur trainer. He'll be out on site. You could probably meet him if you see.
Oh, yeah,
go
you'll
out to
see
the
me
show.
there. Most definitely will.
All right. Thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. That's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions or comments, you can send any or all to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed any part of the show today, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock, or you can find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform and at WJCT.org. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show is produced by Stacey Bennett and directed by Brady Corum, dinosaur fan. Our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us Monday when we explain how Florida's non-compete law could impact your next job hunt. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Museum of Science and History's new exhibition, Mosh Archives, The Story of Us and You, steps you into a treasure trove of memories, now through August 31st. Tickets and information at themosh.org.